Well, Gaye and I have known each other for quite a long time now, but would you like to explain our family connection?
Okay, so our family connection is the fact that I went to live with his grandmother and his great-grandmother when I was a child. So he's more like my great nephew rather than so many removed cousins, because his family has been very much part of my family, very close for a long time. His grandmother is more like my sister, and we have that very strong connection. And through him coming to Canberra and studying at the ANU, we became closer because I was working here at the ANU at the time, so we connected quite regularly.
Yeah, well, I always grew up hearing stories from my nan around, living with Gaye and her sister when they were younger with my great-grandmother. And then, of course, moving to Canberra was a great opportunity to, have some family here, which was really nice to not kind of feel like I was out on my own in a new city. And yeah, since then we
must have found every coffee shop there was around the ANU.
I think we did. And our love of going to the theatre is something
Yes.
that we've done over the last kind of 10 years.
You used to come with the, because I was at the medical school, so Dylan used to come with me to the Med Review every year, so. Yeah.
And we've kind of come full circle now and are working on a show together.
Yes.
I think one of the foundations of our relationship and catching up is to really talk about family stories from back home, but then also when we do go to the theatre, the excitement and the joy of sitting in a dark space and watching great things happen on stage. It's always been something we've talked about.
And I've enjoyed watching his performances over the years. I think, was it Dimboola you were in? Yes, I remember seeing you in that. And then over the years, he's appeared in many little plays that I've gone and seen him in. It's been incredible to see the story emerge. I mean, just from from things that I've learnt through reading, or just family stories that I've been told over the years, and seeing them incorporated into this piece of work is quite amazing.
Yeah, it's been a real privilege to kind of, from Gaye, have these fantastic stories and to kind of weave them together in a theatrical way has been a really incredible experience, and I'm very grateful for your guidance along the way. And it's been at times really funny hearing some of the things that have been passed down, and other times really difficult and challenging, I think, for both of us to kind of have to relive or go back and look at some of those stories.
Because it has been challenging times. I mean, it is a challenging story when you look at it, but it's not just our story. It's a story of many people that had a similar history to us, and the way he's interpreted what we know as fact, and then embellished it by the stories that we know from being told.
I think, yeah, there's a real difference in the way that oral storytelling kind of shifts and changes, and depending on who you're talking to, you can make those adjustments. But when you're writing something down, it's kind of stuck in that it's there. It's kind of fixed in a way. And so it was really important to me that I got it right. And I think that was important to you too.
Yeah.
That I made sure that what we're telling is authentic, that it's representative of not only our story, as Gaye was saying, but of the broader Palo experience as well.
And during the writing of it, we've changed the language at times when we sort of said, no, this language is not language that would be used. So, he went away and looked at that and rewrote it to better reflect the true story.
It's been an ongoing conversation over the last 3 years, I guess, hasn't it?
The story itself is sometimes hard to listen to. I find it conjures up images of sad times. but I think it's a story that is worth telling for the next generation. I think it's a story that we don't want to lose it. You know, we own it, and I think we should be able to tell it.
And I think you're right that it has been really hard telling some aspects of the story, but also one of the big things that came through from so many of the things you've told me is the resilience and the strength, particularly of these women in the Bass Strait.
Yeah.
You know, because of them, we're still here.
That's right.
You know?
I mean, and I suppose for me that's one of the main things is this affirmation that we still are here.
Milk, as you know, is a story about three ancestors who are converging in this metaphysical space, this island, which is representative of one of the islands in the Bass Strait. And it's a conversation between three ancestors around colonisation, the impact that it had and continues to have on them. And it also kind of asks questions around, you know, what are the stories that we're allowed to tell? What stories belong to us? And it's also a story about survival, ultimately, I think. And we have been working together on this over the last kind of 3 years, I guess, a big chunk of time. How has the experience of working on the play been for you, and how have you noticed it change and evolve over the last while?
It's got a depth now probably it didn't have to start with. As you said, they were three individual sort of stories that sort of were siloed a little bit. Now they you can see them, how they fit together. And I think that to me has probably been the biggest change that I've seen it.
And for you, what are some of the key things, the images or elements of the work that really stand out?
Because I've always been very interested in who I'm going to say A. She's been a very strong woman. She's been a survivor. She's been out there. Things have been written about her from different aspects. I mean, from a woman that was handed around between the sealers, you know, stolen. But this defiance about her, you know, it's in a sense of that she will survive. I think is just incredible in that character, and I think you've captured some of that in this play, and I think that's to me is something that I'm really going to take from it.
Yeah, I agree that for me A is a fascinating character. You know, so strong, resilient. You know, standing up to the white fellas in her own way. And I think one of the things that I really wanted to do was to actually write a version of her that wasn't a white man version. You know, as you said, she's been written about in diaries by, you know, old blokes from back in the day, and you know, I really wanted to tell our story, her story, from our perspective. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I remember, and I've tried to find it again, but it's in one of the books I've written, that, you know, the fact that she rebelled and they didn't like her dancing because she was, but she did that as a rebellious way of holding on to her own culture, and not letting it go. She was still obviously still trying to cling on to culture herself.
And I think it was important to both of us that we kept that in the play, that stayed there. And in some ways I like it because it means that she's still rebelling now. And yeah, I feel really proud that we've got that story that we can share.
Yeah.
The play is set on this metaphysical island, which is in the Bass Strait, maybe Flinders Island, who knows. But a lot of the work was informed by your experience of having gone to the island. It'd be great to hear a little bit about,
well, it's just such a beautiful place, and it's so I have this. The beauty of it just overrules everything else. If you want to go over somewhere shopping, you won't be going to the island. You know, the minimum amount of shops to keep you going. But the scenery, the beaches are beautiful. The rocks with that red coating on them. You know, people can't imagine it. There's a mountain. You know, it is just such a beautiful place to be. And the power that it has for me, I've only been back 4 or 5 times, but it's a feeling of going home, and I hope one day you get to have that experience of coming home. And that it does, and I've spoken to people over there and they say, anyone from the old families that go back to the island, you're welcome back as if you've come home. Newcomers have to be there years and years and years to be accepted. But the people from the old families, it's home. And you just get that sense any time you go.
Yeah. And certainly in the play, we really wanted to capture a sense of how beautiful it is, but also the fact that historically some sad things happened there.
And it's a very rugged place.
Yeah.
I mean, the grass almost grows sideways because the winds that comes from the westerlies. Yeah. But you know, it can be, look, you know, even the wildlife there, the mutton birds, you know, it's part of the culture there over there. It's just a very rugged, beautiful place.
On the mutton birds, that's something that comes up in the play and something we've talked a lot about. And do you want to tell us a little bit about what the birding season is and what it involves?
Okay, so, and it was very particularly to our family. I mean, they were birding families. And so birding, at Easter time is usually the time they take the young birds. But they can set their calendar to the birds. They come in about November. Thousands and thousands come from and fly in, go back to the nests where they were born themselves and start the next generation. All lay their eggs within a week. So all the young ones are hatching at the same time. So they know when it's the right time to take them because they're all about the same age within a week or two. And it's about Easter. And that's when they harvest them. And they go out and they get the bird. Get down the old way, get down, put the hand in the nest, pull the bird out, break their neck and get a spit of them and bring them in. But the whole family was involved, and our family had mutton bird sheds on Little Dog, and they'd go across there, and every member of the family would have a role to play, whether it's cutting off the feet, plucking, gutting. There was nothing on a mutton bird that was wasted. So it was very, very important part of our family's yearly activity.
And there's quite a strong smell and flavour to a mutton bird.
I do love them, but you know, you're not going to get the smell out of the kitchen for a few days. Yep. But they're just a very special diet. Yeah, I love them, but they're getting harder and harder to come by these days.
And we've talked a bit about, you know, the visual side of the island and how beautiful it is, and in the production we're really exploring the soundscape of the world, and there are some kind of particular sounds to the island as well that we're hoping to build in. There's the wind, very strong wind. Yeah, it's kind of always there in a way, and then of course it's an island, so it's surrounded by the ocean as well. Yes. Are there good swimming conditions?
Yeah, well, there's some beautiful places. There's absolutely beautiful beaches. And what's even so special about these beautiful beaches, and you can go down, and you're the only footprints on the sand. You know, it's sort of...
Take that, Bondi.
and the clear water, you know, beautiful, also very popular for fishing. So it's good fishing off the islands there too. And of course it's surrounded by islands. You know, you've not just got Flinders Island, but you've got Cape Barren not very far away, and then it's dotted with all these little islands all around it. Some of them are inhabited and many are not.
I wrote milk because I really wanted to tell a specific story, which is the story of our family, and also to kind of illustrate the ongoing impact of colonisation, particularly in our identity. And we've often talked around kind of what it means to be a fair-skinned Aboriginal person, and there, are a lot of there's a lot of conversation around that as a concept, and you've always been you've always said to me that it has no impact or bearing on our identity as Aboriginal people. And I've always found that quite encouraging as I've written the play and kind of grappled with whether I'm allowed to tell the stories of my ancestors because of the way that I look, and whether I have a right to them. And you've always been really encouraging that no, these stories do belong to us, and that they need to be told. And in fact, we need to stand up and say that we're still here. Because as of the mid-70s, so many people thought that Tasmanian Aboriginal people were extinct, was the word that was used.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody has a right to tell you your own identity. Your own identity is yours, and yours alone. So I don't think an organisation or another individual has a right to tell you. You know yourself, who you are and how you feel, and I think writing this has been a good way for you to express that.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of the work, deals with a couple of themes, only a couple, I think a fair few, but we've talked a lot about survival in our conversation, and there are a couple of different representations of survival in the play. We have A, who we spoke about earlier, who kind of experienced first contact and rebelled and maintained her connection to culture through traditional dance and in the play song. And then we have B, who is kind of from the 1960s, and she has left the island, and she has, in a way, tried to go about her life in mainland Tasmania, and on some levels has had to kind of grapple with what it means to come from the island. And you've told me in the past that there was this sense of, if you were from the island, that you were known as being,
and unfortunately, they used to call the half castes. So yes, so there was that, and it was something that I was told through family members many years ago that it was one of the reasons that our family left the island, because our white grandmother always said that the kids would be considered to be half castes.
Well, it's quite sad that you feel this kind of need to leave your home because you might be known in a certain way, and it certainly made life difficult for people moving off the island. Yeah. And in the play, the character B kind of represents that push and pull that a lot of people at the time had. Whether owning up to your heritage could be a dangerous thing. It could mean that you miss out on employment. It could mean that you're shunned by friends or certain parts of the community, and it was a pretty difficult time, and I think still in Tasmania a difficult conversation to have with yourself. Yeah.
I mean, because there's some members of the family that were darker skinned that were very ashamed of that, and I think, I don't know whether you incorporated that with the dusting of the. Yeah, you did. Yeah, and she used to put talc on her hands to lighten her skin, and wore very pale makeup to try and lighten her skin because she was ashamed. And I suppose what I'm trying to say is that through this we are showing we're not ashamed. We're standing out there and saying, look, this is who we are, and we're proud of it.
And one of the alarming things is that wasn't that long ago.
No.
That people felt the need to do these things, and there's also this sense of personal reconciliation that we all kind of need to reconcile with ourselves in a way before we can start to contribute to the broader reconciliation movement. And the play talks about what it means to be descended from this incredible legacy of resilience of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, but then also to be descended from
we're on the other side as well.
Yeah.
We
and that
he doesn't stand out there in their own. he is actually, we're descended from him too.
Yeah. And this year, for National Reconciliation Week, the theme is around reconciliation not just being words, but it being around taking action as well. What does that mean to you?
Well, I suppose through by taking action, you are involving it. You're not just, it's through your deeds. And I suppose this play is your deed, of how you've used it as a reconciliation tool.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think I like to see, words being action in this sense.
Yeah.
That writing this play is around truth-telling. It's around highlighting a story that isn't often told. And as you said earlier, it's around saying we're still here.
Yes.
Well, I think when people leave the theatre after seeing the play, I want them to really be thinking about what they can do. As you were saying, the deeds that we do in the reconciliation space are much more important than the things that are being said. But deeds can be reflecting on your own past, or
even being prepared to listen to the story. I mean, so many people say, "Oh, I don't know an Aboriginal person," but do they? I mean, if you looked at Dylan and myself, you're not going to assume that you're speaking to an Aboriginal person. Be respectful in your language. You don't know who you're speaking to, so be conscious of that. Be open in your mind to listen to the stories and just go, oh, just more blackfellas whinging. There's reason behind it. I mean, look at all the media we're getting at the moment about deaths in custody. I mean, listen to them. Just don't go, oh no, here they are banging on again. Listen to what what they have to say, and feel a little bit of their pain. These things have gone on for too long. Things have to change, and they take too long to change. But if everybody contributed in some little way of even just adding their voice, sort of saying, I hear you, is contributing. Because it's just, it doesn't have to be big deeds. It doesn't have to be big deeds.
Yeah, I think those small steps and the small actions that people take collectively are quite powerful. Yeah. And it's about listening, but it's also about stepping back sometimes, and I think elevating the voices that need to be heard. Whether that's within your community, within your school, an organisation that you work with, knowing whether it's your turn to speak or not, I think is a crucial factor towards achieving reconciliation.
And even, I mean, it's just adding your voice. It's so it can be so powerful. An Aboriginal person can speak out, but if you're there beside them, speaking out with them, or even just that standing beside them in a conversation, it's very powerful.
Because reconciliation can't happen in isolation from each other. It can't just be blackfellas. It can't just be non-Indigenous Australia trying to achieve this state of reconciliation. It actually, by its very nature, requires a participation between,
And also, I think in its early days, a lot of organisations used to say, have we got a black person on staff that can lead the reconciliation? That's not what it's about. Reconciliation is about both sides. It doesn't have to be led by your Aboriginal staff. It's having them there as well, but the whole thing is joining together, and it can be led by your non-Aboriginal staff, and but the whole thing is that you're doing it together. That's what reconciliation is.
Responsibility doesn't just sit.
No. Just because the topic is something, it's Aboriginal, it doesn't mean to say that it is just that they have to be the only ones that are leading it. It has to be input and And sometimes, in some organisations, it means a financial commitment to change and a willingness to change. The whole structure sometimes.
Yeah. So the idea for Milk really sprung from a family photo that you shared me, and then from there it's kind of grown. But it's a photo of the family on the island, and there was a woman in the background, and I really kind of sat with that image for a long time, and thought, how can I tell her story? And wanting to do justice to her life, but also, whenever you write a play, you're putting it out there into the world, and so it kind of needs to be representative of other experience as well. And it's been fascinating to kind of go through the personal artifacts that we have, but then also to kind of read books and diaries.
And it's a real find when like in the particular book, found an ancestor, and I'd never seen that photograph before. And it was just wow. It's a wow moment when you actually do find those little treasures, and it sends you on the next little search of what do I know about these people.
Yeah, and that sense of constantly searching is what we're all doing.
Yep.
Anyone of any background, we're all interested in our past and where we come from and how that has led to who we are now. And I think we've tried to build that into the play as well.